Hello and welcome to one of the cement works of the Lafarge Group. The safety of the people working at our sites is the #1 priority of the Lafarge Group. For several years, we have taken measures to reduce the number of accidents by developing a zero-accident culture. The zero-accident culture is translated for us by the fact that the safety of people is regarded as a value more important than the mission assigned to them, by the fact that risky situations are not ignored and that risky behavior is no case tolerated by the managers and employees, by the fact that each hierarchical superior are concerned with organizing the work of their teams by minimizing the safety risks, and that employees are permanently concerned with not being injured doing their job. The cement works is a dangerous environment. This safety briefing aims to highlight the key risks as well as the applicable rules and recommendations at this site. At the end of this presentation, you will take a knowledge test before issuing you with a security pass valid for 1 year. Once in possession of this pass, we expect you to adopt a positive attitude, subscribe to the zero-accident culture, observe the rules and recommendations presented today, think before you act, analyze the risks of an operation before intervening. In the event of hazardous behavior, we reserve the right to prohibit you from accessing the site temporarily or permanently. Before you begin, you should remember that a successful intervention is an intervention without an accident. To intervene on our site, you must wear personal protective equipment appropriate to the operation you are going to perform. In all cases, the following individual protective equipment is required: a hard hat on which the name of the company and the security pass should appear, covering goggles, high safety shoes, gloves suited to the operation that you have to perform, covering and high visibility work clothing, and finally, hearing protection. Warning: people wearing glasses will have to wear appropriate overglasses or safety glasses. Covering glasses worn over corrective glasses will not be accepted in our establishment. Depending on the risk analysis, the type of operation, and the intervention place, you must complete this basic personal protection equipment with appropriate equipment. Movements are one of the first causes of an accident within the cement works. Seemingly mundane, movement in a plant involves the risks of accidents that can be avoided by applying simple rules. I won't run. I will hold the rail on the stairs when going up and down, but also in my movements where possible. I will move around carefully, paying particular attention to holes, steps, obstacles and ruts that I may encounter on my travels. I will adjust my trajectory according to the conditions, especially on days of sleet or rain. I will use walkways where they exist. I will not cross any markings without the agreement of the site manager. I will keep my distance from vehicles and machinery, or I will indicate myself to the driver prior to entering his area of movement. I will not go behind a moving vehicle. I will not walk in the middle of the road. I will wear gloves when moving around, and I will not put sharp objects in my pockets. And finally, I will wear high visibility clothing. When traveling by vehicle, I will drive carefully and respect the road signs in the plant. Wearing a seatbelt is mandatory in all vehicles and continuously, even for short trips. The speed limit is 20 kilometers an hour in the plant and 30 kilometers an hour in the quarry. Vehicles are parked in reverse. private cars are prohibited on the sites. The use of mobile phones when driving is prohibited on the entire plant. Finally, a valid driver's license is required, as well as a driving permit and a certificate of operator safety competency, depending on the vehicle used. During an intervention, communication between the different operators is a key element of your safety. If I am site manager, I will read the elements of the prevention plan and of the risk analysis and communicate them to the operators. I will define and communicate the procedure. I will plan the safety briefing for the operators. I will display the safety documents on the site. I am assured of compliance with the lockout procedure. If I am an operator, I should have received the safety briefing. Before intervening, your supervisor must inform you of the risks of the site and the procedure. I have signed the risk analysis sheet. I know the procedure. I know the site's access routes and emergency exits. I will lock out the installation with my personal padlock in my name. Before intervening, the installations concerned must be made safe to prevent an untimely starting or the release of an energy during your intervention. This lockout operation is carried out by the Lafarge lockout manager, including using a padlock. Any intervention on equipment or in the immediate vicinity should be subject to a lockout. As either an operator or a manager, you must remember that an intervention requires the establishment of at least one padlock on a device or on a lockout box. At the end of your intervention and after agreement with the Lafarge contact, you must lock in. All of the devices and information relating to the lockout are written on the lockout form, a copy of which must be displayed on the site. Your padlock should be personal, in your name, and a unique key. You must have 2 padlocks available per person. Non-compliance with the Lafarge lockout standard exposes you to a major, serious and potentially fatal accident risk. For your safety, follow this procedure. Operating machine interventions are prohibited. In the contrary case, the intervention must be made the subject of a procedure or a procedure written and validated by the Lafarge manager. The lockout rules also apply during testing periods. During your intervention, you must manage all aspects of your site in terms of marking, storage, and cleanliness. Your site must be physically cordoned off. Within this work area, you are the only one able to permit access to your site to the other external or Lafarge operators. The marking must be appropriate to the extent of the progress of your site and according to the risks in order to ensure minimum grip and good circulation. The sites must be constantly tidied, i.e., access must be free and clear of any obstacles, hazards indicated, gas cylinders must be attached, electrical cables and air vents must be positioned so as not to cause a fall. Air vents must be equipped with a whip prevention wire. Waste must be disposed as far as possible. In the case of pollution by a leak or a tipping of product, notify the Lafarge contact immediately and take immediate steps to limit the impact of the pollution. Work at height is one of the first causes of fatal accidents within the Lafarge group. In order to reduce the exposure to the risks of falling from a height, The group has implemented a standard which defines the rules to apply during an operation at height. For Lafarge, all work done at a height greater than 1 meter is considered as working at height and must be addressed in the following way. Firstly, you must define the procedure by giving priority to work on the ground to eliminate the risk. If this is not possible, you must use protection from falls equipment either by putting fixed protections in place, such as walkways or guardrails, or use temporary work platforms, such as aerial platforms, scaffolding, or platform stepladders with wheels to prevent falls. Finally, if the putting in place of these materials is not possible, then use of personal protection equipment such as a harness is permitted. The use of a harness will require a written license for each operation prior to training by an approved body, authorization and accreditation. Lastly, the equipment will be checked each time. Scaffolding must be erected by staff authorized to perform this type of operation. Once the scaffolding has been erected, it must be approved by a person or an authorized agency who will give permission to access it. If the noticed authorized access is not in place, access is prohibited. It is strictly prohibited to even temporarily change any scaffolding. If necessary, the changes must be made by authorized staff and the modified scaffolding must be approved again. Ladder work is only authorized as a last resort after approval of the fall prevention means by the Lafarge contact. To use a platform, you must have a certificate of operator safety competency and a driving permit, a certificate of conformity to the equipment and knowledge of the user manual. In all cases, the platform operator must wear a harness and a short tether attached at all times to prevent ejection from the basket. A supervisor who knows the emergency maneuvers will be positioned at the foot of the platform to intervene in the event of a problem. The following is formally prohibited: accessing a site with the platform, mounting the guardrail or leaving the basket, using a platform as a crane for lifting loads. Work on platform stepladders with wheels is permitted. Any use of a harness or a platform will give rise to the drafting of a work at height permit, which must be validated by your hierarchy and handed to the Lafarge contact. The operators will need to be trained by an approved body, and finally the equipment need to be inspected and checked before use. To use fall protection or PPE equipment, you must have obtained accreditation and authorization. The consequences of a fall are always serious. Non-compliance with the standard on work at height cannot be tolerated. Handling operations are common on our sites and must be performed carefully and professionally. In the case of handling with crane or hoist-type equipment, you must observe the rules below. Before any operation, estimate the load to be lifted. Check the authorized load for the lifting equipment, cranes, hoist, slings, ties, etc. Observe the rules for slinging and especially the maximum angles allowed. Check that the head of maneuvering knows the maneuver movements. Cordon off the handling area and prohibit passage. In all cases, passing under a load is strictly prohibited. Manual handling operations will be avoided in favor of mechanical handling means in order to save operators. If the use of the handling equipment is not possible, the application of movements and postures should be systematic. Estimate the load. Remove obstacles from the path. Bend your knees. Support the load close to your body. Avoid repetitive movements. Avoid prolonged, uncomfortable postures. In all cases, you must wear personal protective equipment and in particular gloves and safety shoes. The use of hand tools such as grinders, drills, disc cutter and sledgehammer or welding equipment is very common in the interventions at the cement works. For all operations, suitable personal protective equipment as well as checking the status of the equipment before and after use are mandatory. In all cases, think before acting and position your body in such a way as not to be in the path of the tool or the projections generated by the tool. This simple precaution could avoid half of the lost time accidents caused by this type of tool. Interventions with grinder, drills or a disc cutter must be carried out with goggles, gloves and clothing that protects the body from burns. In all cases, the original safety devices must be present on the machine, and especially the handle which lets you have both hands on the tool. Using a disc cutter to do grinding is prohibited. Welding operations must be performed with welding goggles or a welding mask. Clothing protecting the body from burns, such as a leather apron and gloves, suitable for working with hot spots. It is your responsibility to position screens or protective tarpaulins, if necessary, to prevent metal drips, projections or eye flashes for people working in the vicinity of the site. The use of sharp tools such as cutters or knives will have to be done with cut-resistant gloves and by positioning the body out of the trajectory of the tool. The use of striking tools such as a sledgehammer, hammers, impact wrench, chisel and other metallic objects manufactured from hard steel can generate of metal splinters whose trajectory is unpredictable and which penetrate normal work clothing. Therefore, you must use suitable protections such as a leather apron, visor and leather gloves, protecting vital areas of the body. A preliminary inspection of the tools used and an evacuation of people not directly involved in the operation will reduce the risk of accident. The disassembly operations must be conducted paying attention to preventing accidents. Before you begin a disassembly, you need to conduct a risk analysis and define a procedure specifying the details of the operations and materials to be used. The major risk is the lack of control of residual energies such as the weight, pressure, relaxation of constraints or electricity, which may surprise the operator during disassembly. As for the other operations, the site must be kept clean and tidy. The removed equipment must be evacuated as far as possible. Any collective protections concerned must be put back in place or modified accordingly, and the areas of movement must be repaired by blocking holes, replacing the railings, etc. Several interventions may take place in a confined space. The associated risks are identified in the risk analysis sheet, but you must be vigilant and manage the risks that your intervention generates to those who are next to you, but also above and below. To do this, communicate with your Lafarge contact and the other operators. Cordon off your area of activity. Remove any unnecessary markings. Observe the markings in place. Report any interferences in the risk analysis sheet. Overlaying work will not be accepted. For the duration of the intervention, the correct management of your site will be checked by your Lafarge contact, audits and safety visits. Any discrepancies found will be corrected and may give rise to site closures. In the event of serious or repeated breaches, we reserve the right to prohibit you from accessing the site. Compliance with the safety rules is a condition of employment. The following information is provided for information purposes. For complete information, please refer to the Labour Code. You must respect the Labour Code, in particular the legal thresholds for work time. Specifically, the working day may not exceed 10 hours. The daily rest period must be a minimum of 11 hours. The working week may not exceed 48 hours. The weekly rest period must be a minimum of 35 hours. If you feel you may be in danger, you have the right to exercise your right of withdrawal and to stop your intervention. In this case, tell your superior and the Lafarge contact. Once the work is complete, your Lafarge contact will check the completed work with you and confirm the end of the work. To complete the intervention, you must release the facilities, lock in, and tidy the site. Before locking in, you must release the facilities by restoring the safety features such as railings, protective cover, and clear the area of intervention of any equipment in order to allow the test to be performed and start up. Then, with the agreement of the Lafarge contact, you can lock in the facilities by removing all the padlocks. Finally, before you leave the site area, you must return any equipment loaned by Lafarge, remove your equipment and tools, and dispose of any waste. Report your departure from the site to the Lafarge manager. The cement works is a hazardous industrial environment. We will now review the main specific risks of our business. Be careful. The quarry includes the specific risks related to the operation, such as the blasting and circulation. Before accessing the quarry's facilities, consult the traffic plan displayed at the entrance. Check the safest path with the Lafarge contact and stay away from any machinery. In order to limit the risks related to the movement of machinery, all vehicles accessing the quarry must be fitted with a rotating beacon. Do not go near any machinery on foot or by vehicle without indicating your presence to the driver. Do not cut the trajectory of any machinery, observe the speed limits, do not go behind any machinery, and be careful not to remain in a dead angle. The blasting are scheduled at the start of the week and communicated to all Lafarge contacts. On blasting days, the display "Blasting Today" is visible at the entrance to the quarry, and all people entering the quarry need to sign in on the table provided for this purpose at the entrance to the quarry and sign out when leaving. The blasting is scheduled for 12:45 and preceded by a message via loudspeaker broadcast using a plant car. You must take shelter in a building for the duration of the blasting. Traffic on foot or by car are prohibited in the plant and the quarry during blasting. Concretions are clumps of material glued to the wall or ceiling of the facilities. They are potentially found everywhere in devices, but also on the structure of buildings. The most frequent are concretions of the kiln system. In all cases, it is strictly prohibited to go or to work under a concretion. Cleaning must take place beforehand. Several times a week, weekly cleaning operations of the concretions on the inside of the kiln are carried out by teams specially trained in using a high-pressure spray. During these operations, the risks of projections of hot materials are very significant and are indicated by the "Do Not Enter" panels in the tower, which formally prohibit access to the area. The plant has several fuel workshops such as Coke, G2000, DSB, and meat and bone workshops which are subject to ATEX regulations, explosive atmosphere. For all the fuel workshops, the risks will be defined by the risk analysis sheet established with the Lafarge contact. Consult it before you start the work to identify the risks, put in place the protection means, and define the personal protection equipment required. For all work by hotspots, a hot work permit will have to be attained. Smoking is, of course, prohibited in these workshops. The specific risks are fire, explosions, and work on the equipment using chemicals. Chemical products. Many chemicals are present on the site. You should know the meaning of the signs, the associated risks, and take prevention measures, particularly in terms of PPE. Stacks of material are frequent in the cement industry environment. Intervening on a stack of material in a silo or hopper is extremely dangerous and must be the subject of special measures. Intervening alone is prohibited, as is going by foot, passing by or working less than 10 meters from a stack of material. It is prohibited to enter a silo or hopper without a permit. The specific risks of these stacks of material are collapsing, burying, and falls. Access by vehicle for the stacks of material or from above for hoppers will help limit the risks. Ionizing sources can be used in a quarry or in the plant for different applications. The areas are marked by a specific panel and access is prohibited even for a few minutes. Carcinogenic, mutagenic, and reproductive products called CMR are present on the site and involve the use of the specific PPE which is specified in the risk analysis sheet. Conveyors are very dangerous and have injured or killed several people on our sites. In order to prevent these accidents, Lafarge has set out 10 rules to be observed during an intervention on a conveyor or in the immediate vicinity of a conveyor. An intervention in close proximity to an operating conveyor will only be allowed if all of the protection devices are in place. If the intervention lets you keep a sufficient distance between the conveyor and the operators. Specifically, that clothing, tools, hair, and any part of the body are at a sufficient distance from the conveyor. The facilities must be locked out before intervening. Operators must not change nor incorrectly use or remove the control, locking, or signaling devices. It is prohibited to mount, sit, run, stand, touch, or walk over or under the exposed parts of the conveyors. Operators must be trained and prepared for the use and maintenance of the conveyors. You must ensure that no one is located near the conveyors during its startup, and you must report any hazardous conditions or behavior. Work in a confined space shall be subject to a permit. Warning: all of our facilities are started automatically and remotely. Access and the interventions in electrical substations are subject to authorization. Tanks and wagons can topple over when unloading. It is prohibited to move around or work near a wagon or a tank being unloaded. Wearing hearing protections is mandatory in the plant because of the ambient noise and the type of intervention, which generates a noise level higher than 80 decibels. Grinding, welding, cutting, rock blasting, working next to machinery or a compressor are such common operations in the cement works for which the noise level is higher than permitted limit. Remember is that if you raise your voice to be heard, then the noise level is greater than 80 decibels. You must have a driving license, a driving permit, and a certificate of operator safety competency to drive handling equipment. Raw meal, the clinker, cement, but also the exhaust gas, grinding and welding operations, and more generally, interventions at the cement works generate dust, which may have an impact on your health. The most dangerous dust to health cannot be seen, dust with a diameter of less than 10 microns. The requirement to wear a mask will be specified in the risk analysis sheet, but we encourage you to always wear one. In the event of an accident, stay calm. Protect the victim by cutting the power, electricity, gas, etc. Quickly examine the victim's condition or the importance of the accident to be able to give precise indications. Alert the emergency services and notify the central room. Administer first aid to the victim if you are trained performing emergency operations appropriate for the victim or the accident. Emergency numbers: Pompier, Fix, 18, Mobile, 112. SAMU, Fix, 15, Mobile, 112. Salle Centrale, Fix, 4442, Mobile, 02 43 66 44 42. Any accident must be reported immediately to the Lafarge contact. In the event of a not very serious accident, Lafarge encourages companies to offer the employee a different job with the agreement of the company doctor to ensure the continuity of work. In the event of an accident, leaving the victim alone on the site without the advice of the emergency services and without informing his superiors or Lafarge is prohibited. Certain circumstances may lead us to evacuate the facilities. In the event of evacuation, stay calm. Evacuate without hurrying. Gather at the closest point. Count those present. Await instructions. The evacuation message is broadcast by a car fitted with a loudspeaker. It is important that each operator individually clocks in and out so that the number of people present at the plant is known. Access to the site is regulated. Access is gained from the security post with your personal identity card to be presented every time you enter or exit. Personal vehicles are prohibited outside of the visitor and company car park. Lafarge provides toilets and some changing rooms. Please respect these facilities and keep them clean. During halts in production, the company may install one or several bungalows in the activity area. You have to go through the security reception before intervening within the plant to obtain a security pass valid for 1 year, mandatory, and to be stuck on your hard hat. The Lafarge cement sites have an ISO 14001 environmental certification. Our environmental policy is to minimize dust and gases emissions, to save natural resources, to integrate oneself in the environment in the best possible way, to prevent and arrange the management of the accidental situations. We expect the subcontractor operators on the plant to subscribe to this policy, particularly in terms of sorting waste. You are responsible for disposing of your waste, and it is prohibited to use our sorting facilities without defined authorization at the time of signing the contract. In the case of non-compliance, Lafarge Cements reserves the right to interrupt your site.